Marissa Clayton had lived in Ellensburg, Washington all her life. Nestled between the hills and the wide, open sky, the town seemed like the perfect blend of comfort and routine. Everyone knew everyone. You could walk into the Daily Grind coffee shop and the barista, Jorge, would already have your drink ready before you said a word. Marissa was one of those people everyone liked. She taught year 4 at Ellensburg Primary and was always the first to volunteer for community events. People often said she had a warm smile and a voice that made even the most restless child stop and listen. On Monday morning, the first snow of November painted the town white. Marissa arrived at school early, as usual, with a tin of homemade cookies for the staff room. She was preparing a winter-themed lesson for her pupils, complete with paper snowflakes and a story time corner about snow spirits and icy adventures. That morning felt no different than any other. Until lunchtime. As she walked into the cafeteria to check on her students, she noticed a few of the teachers whispering. They looked at her, but didn't smile back. Mr. Sanders, who usually chatted about baseball, avoided eye contact entirely. At first, she thought maybe she had interrupted something private. But the stares continued. The whispers multiplied. Even the parents during pickup didn't wave at her the way they usually did. That night, Marissa sat on her couch, snow still falling outside. Her phone buzzed with a message from her colleague, Aaron. "You might want to stay off Facebook tonight." Marissa's heart dropped. She opened the app and froze. There, shared hundreds of times, was a vague but alarming post in a local community group. "Someone we trust with our children has betrayed that trust. Be careful who you leave your kids with. Not everyone is who they pretend to be." There was no name, but the comment section said it all. "She's always been too friendly with the kids. Something about her smile feels fake. My son said she hugs them too much. I've always had a weird feeling about Miss Clayton." Marissa stared at the screen, her mouth dry, her chest tight. It had begun. The next day, Marissa arrived at school earlier than usual. She hoped that a good night's sleep would clear her mind, but her stomach churned with unease. The snowfall had stopped, and the sky was painted a dull gray. Even the cold air felt different, like it carried tension instead of frost. As she walked through the corridor, she noticed how the sound of her footsteps echoed more than usual. A few doors shut quietly as she passed. She smiled at a student's mother by the entrance. The woman gave her a tight, almost fearful nod and quickly walked away. In the staff room, no one touched the plate of cinnamon rolls Marissa brought. Aaron, her closest colleague, was staring at her phone, frowning. "Morning," Marissa said, trying to sound normal. Aaron looked up, hesitating. "Morning." The rest of the teachers stayed quiet. Even the coffee machine seemed louder in the silence. When Marissa sat down at her desk, the principal, Mr. Whitaker, knocked on her door. "Can we talk in my office?" he asked, his voice tight. Marissa followed him, her heart in her throat. He closed the office door gently, then sat behind his desk. "I need to ask you something," he began, not meeting her eyes. "There's been some concern raised by a few parents. They're saying you've been overly affectionate with students. Specifically one student." Marissa blinked. "What?" I hug them occasionally. Like any teacher. Nothing more." "I believe you," Mr. Whitaker said, "but we have to follow protocol. Until we sort this out, I'm placing you on paid leave. Effective immediately."
Her ears rang.
"Paid leave? For what?" She felt her voice go hoarse. "Do I even get to know who made the complaint?" "I'm sorry, Marissa. It's confidential." The walk back to her classroom felt like a march through thick fog. Her pupils were lining up for art class. Some waved. Others looked unsure, copying the hesitancy of the adults around them. She packed her things in silence. As she exited the building, snow began falling again. Soft, silent, endless. That evening, the community group post had grown. More comments. More speculation. More people treating rumor as truth. A new post appeared. "My daughter said Miss Clayton always keeps her after class to talk. What's she even saying to her?" And another. "Where there's smoke, there's fire." Marissa sat on her bed, clutching a pillow, trying to remember every interaction, every moment that might have been misunderstood. Her phone vibrated again. A private message. From an unknown profile. You think you're safe. You're not. Her hands trembled. This wasn't just gossip anymore. Someone wanted her gone. By the end of the week, Ellensburg no longer felt like home. The town that once greeted Marissa with smiles and small talk now stared through her with suspicion. Even the cashier at the corner store gave her exact change, without a word. Every corner of her life had grown cold, not just from the winter air, but from the collective silence of people who used to call her friend. Marissa tried to go for a walk around the neighborhood to clear her mind. It was the same path she used to take after work, winding past the library, the post office, and the tiny bakery with lemon scones she used to love. But today, windows closed as she walked by. One woman crossed the street to avoid her. A man she had tutored in reading 2 years ago barely acknowledged her wave. She made it halfway before turning back. Her world was shrinking. Back at her home, the mailbox overflowed with letters. Most were from parents she used to know. Some simply said, shame. One said, monster. Another contained nothing but a printed copy of the original Facebook post, highlighted and circled in red ink. Marissa didn't cry. She couldn't. Her body felt beyond tears, like grief had turned into something heavy, something solid in her chest. Then came the phone call. Miss Clayton? This is Detective Barnes from the Ellensburg Police Department. We've received a formal report. I need you to come in tomorrow morning for a statement. Her mouth went dry again. A report? What kind of report? I can't discuss details over the phone. Just come by at 9. When she arrived the next day, the police station's fluorescent lights hummed in her ears. Detective Barnes was polite, but detached. A woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and methodical. She offered Marissa water, then switched on the audio recorder. This is a formal statement regarding allegations of inappropriate behavior with a minor at Ellensburg Primary School. Marissa's breath caught. She had known the rumors were spreading, but a police report made it real. I've never done anything inappropriate, she said quickly. This is all some horrible misunderstanding. Detective Barnes didn't react. She just nodded, asking question after question. Some were factual. Some felt like traps. By the end, Marissa felt stripped of all dignity. She signed the statement, her hands trembling. As she stepped outside, snow crunched underfoot. Across the street, a woman stood by a lamppost, phone raised, filming. The video would be on Facebook within the hour. Marissa returned home to find her inbox overflowing. Every social media account she had was under siege. Direct messages threatened her career. Anonymous profiles spread doctored screenshots of private conversations. Even her teaching union page was flooded with calls for her dismissal. She opened one link and felt her chest tighten. A blog post spelled out the worst rumors in vivid detail, complete with fake testimonials from concerned parents and a grainy photo taken out of context. The comments below cheered every cruel claim. That night, Marissa logged on again. A live video was streaming from outside her house. Dozens of viewers watched as someone circled the perimeter, pointing at Christmas lights that she had lovingly strung the week before. A voice whispered in the darkness, "We know what you did." She screamed at the screen, but the voice only laughed and ended the stream. With trembling fingers, Marissa posted a brief statement. She wrote that she was innocent and pleaded for calm. Within minutes, trolls attacked the post. They called her liar, predator, fraud. Her phone rang. It was Aaron. "I'm so sorry," whispered Aaron. "They're tearing you apart." "I don't know what to say." Marissa's voice cracked. "Why won't anyone help me?" Aaron was silent. The next morning, the local newspaper ran a front-page story. The headline did not mention her name, but hinted at scandal at Ellensburg Primary. Marissa stared at the printout delivered to her door. Beneath the headline was a blurred photo of her, taken from a distance. She realized something. The community did not need proof. They only needed a spark. And now it was an inferno. By the following week, Marissa's world had collapsed into silence and shadows. Her school placed her on unpaid leave, pending investigation. No one from the staff reached out. Her students' parents avoided eye contact at the grocery store. She would catch glimpses of them steering their children away from her aisle. Deliveries to her house stopped. One driver dropped a parcel 10 feet from the door and ran back to his van. The local book club, where she had once led warm discussions over tea, removed her from the group chat without a word. Even Aaron, once a constant presence, stopped replying to texts. On Monday morning, a black spray-painted message greeted her from the side of her garage. "Get out." She stood there for 10 minutes, breath steaming in the cold air, unable to move. She reported it to the police. They said they would make a note. But no officer came. No photos were taken. The loneliness pressed in like a physical weight. Inside her house, Marissa began pacing. Her footsteps echoed. The television remained off. The radio felt too loud. Her phone was either a weapon or a ghost. One night, she received an email from an unknown sender. The subject line read, "Truth is your only chance." Attached was a video file. She hesitated, then played it. It showed her in the staff room at school. She was laughing, pouring coffee, talking to a group of colleagues. The footage was silent, grainy, distorted, and it had been edited. One part zoomed in as she placed a hand on a student's shoulder in the hallway. It paused on that frame, circled in red. The sender had written only one line beneath. "How do you want to explain this?" She slammed her laptop shut. Who had recorded her? Who had access to that footage? She realized she wasn't just being watched. Someone was orchestrating this. Marissa couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to every creak of the floorboards, every shifting pipe. Her mind conjured images of hidden cameras, recording her every movement. She checked each window twice, 3 times. Drew the curtains. Unplugged the router. But paranoia could not protect her. The following day, an envelope appeared on her doorstep. There was no stamp, no address. Just her name in sharp black ink. Inside was a photograph. It showed her car parked outside the house of one of her former students. The photo was recent, taken just 3 days ago, though she hadn't been there in over a month. Beneath it, a note read, "We see where you go." She dropped the envelope as though it were burning. Her stomach turned. Her hands shook. She was being followed. Later that afternoon, Marissa received a text. It was from an unknown number. "You're not crazy. They're doing this to you on purpose. Meet me at the old water tower. 6 p.m. Come alone." She stared at the message for a full minute. It sounded like a trap, but it was the first time anyone had acknowledged her reality. Not denying, not accusing. She drove out just before sunset. The road to the old water tower was rough, lined with brittle trees and snow that refused to melt. At exactly 6, she parked and stepped out. The wind howled through the tower's rusted frame. And then a figure stepped from behind the structure. It was a man, hooded, hesitant, his eyes darting in every direction. She recognized him. He was the school janitor. Quiet, overlooked. She hadn't seen him in weeks. "Why are you here?" she asked. He glanced behind her, then whispered, "You need to know. This didn't start with you. And it won't end with you." Her pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "They've done this before. To someone else. 2 years ago. Same playbook. Same lies. Only that woman left town. Disappeared." Marissa's voice cracked. "Why are you helping me?" "Because no one helped her." He reached into his coat and handed her a flash drive. "Everything I've saved. Recordings. Emails. It's all there. But be careful, they're watching me too." Before she could speak again, he turned and vanished into the woods. Marissa stood alone beneath the water tower, holding the only proof that she might not be losing her mind. Back in her living room, Marissa stared at the flash drive. She turned off her phone, pulled the curtains tight, and plugged it into her laptop. A folder popped open. Dozens of files, each labeled by date and initials. Her hands trembled as she clicked the first one. It was a screen recording of a private staff chat group. Marissa's name came up repeatedly, but not with praise. One message read, "We just need her out. One mistake is all it takes." Another replied, "Let's push the narrative." Erin will do it. She's close to her. Erin? She scrolled further. Screenshots of forged emails, manipulated surveillance stills, anonymous complaints that looked eerily similar in wording. Then a video. She clicked play. It was a covert recording in the staff lounge. Erin and two others were speaking in hushed voices. She's too perfect, said one. She's a threat, whispered another. Erin sighed. I'll handle it. The clip ended. Marissa's heart sank. Erin, the one person she trusted, had been part of it from the start. She pressed her palm to her forehead. She felt dizzy, angry,
betrayed.
Digging further, she uncovered a folder named Cascade 02. Inside were archived articles, redacted police reports, and photos of a woman she didn't recognize, smiling, standing in front of a school very much like hers. It was the teacher who vanished 2 years ago. Marissa read through the file. The same accusations, the same tactics. No arrest, no proof. Just a smear campaign followed by sudden silence. The woman had left town overnight. No forwarding address.
Gone.
Everything pointed to the same circle of staff. The same names appeared again and again. Marissa finally understood. This wasn't just about her. It was a pattern, deliberate, rehearsed, perfected. And now she had the evidence. But she couldn't go to the police. Not yet. Not with half the town poisoned against her. Not without knowing who else was involved. She needed someone who could expose the truth publicly. Someone they couldn't silence. It took Marissa 3 days to find him. He used to be a local crime reporter, Alan Ruiz. 10 years ago, his stories had shaken the county to its core. Police misconduct, corruption, illegal land deals. Then suddenly, he vanished from the spotlight. Rumor had it he'd been threatened. Some said he left journalism. Others whispered he was still digging, just quieter now. Marissa found him in a small cabin northwest of town, near the base of Mount Pilchuck. She drove through rain and fog, gripping the steering wheel with nervous hands. When he opened the door, he looked older than in his bylines. Graying beard, wary eyes, but alert, sharp. I don't do interviews anymore, he said flatly. I'm not here for an interview, Marissa replied. I'm here because they're doing it again. He studied her for a long moment. Come in. Inside, his cabin was cluttered with old newspapers, cassette tapes, and a whiteboard filled with names. Marissa showed him the flash drive. As he scanned the files, his expression changed, from skepticism to recognition. I've seen some of these names before, he murmured. Back when the Wilson case collapsed. And the Sandhurst transfer. You know them? I know of them. Enough to know they don't like sunlight. Marissa leaned in. Then help me expose them. Please. Alan tapped the flash drive. This is good. But it's not enough. You want this to stick? We need the story. The timeline. Testimonies. Your voice. My voice is already ruined, Marissa said bitterly. They've made me into a monster. Alan looked at her, eyes hard with purpose. That's exactly why they won't expect you to fight back. We're going to build this like a case. You and me. Quietly. He pulled out a dusty laptop and opened a blank document. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. And she did. Through the night, she recounted every detail, the cold stares, the first accusation, the staged evidence, the betrayal. Alan took notes, asked questions, drew connections she hadn't seen. By dawn, the outline of the story was forming. You are just the latest, he said grimly. They have a pattern. Every 3 years or so, someone gets pushed out. And every time, it gets cleaner, faster. Marissa stared at the rising sun. For the first time in months, she felt something stir in her chest. Resolve. She wasn't just going to survive this. She was going to burn it down. The next weeks were a quiet war. Alan and Marissa worked in silence, meeting only at his cabin, careful never to use phones or public Wi-Fi. They mapped out the pattern of sabotage, each victim, each timeline. Alan had contacts from his old days, retired officers and school board clerks who still owed him favors. Piece by piece, They began to unearth the machinery that had turned Marissa's life into ash. One night, Alan slid a paper across the table. It was a transcript of a board meeting, the one held after the disappearance of the teacher 2 years ago. They signed a gag order, he said. No investigation. No public record. Just silence. Marissa stared at the document. Signatures she recognized. Some from the current school board. Some from her own school. They covered it up. Alan nodded. And they'll do it again if we're not precise. Marissa felt her pulse race. So we go public now?
No.
Not yet. If we push too soon, they'll discredit us. Or worse. Then what? Alan gave her a look she would never forget. Calm, cold, certain. We wait until the school board meeting.
2 weeks from now.
It's public. It's recorded. If we drop it all then, documents, voices, names, they won't have time to bury it. Marissa hesitated. What if they stop us before that? Alan reached into a drawer and pulled out 3 identical flash drives. I've made copies. One goes to a lawyer. One to a journalist in Seattle. One stays with me. And mine, she asked. You don't get one. You get something better, a seat at that meeting. Marissa stared at him. They'll never let me speak. They won't have a choice. We'll make sure of that. She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't want to know.
Not yet.
But the plan was set. The next day, Marissa went back to work. She walked the halls of the school as if nothing had changed. She smiled. She nodded. She answered politely. But her eyes saw everything. People still whispered. But now, she watched for who whispered to whom. She took note of sudden silences. Who avoided her. Who lingered. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was hunting. It was raining on the night of the meeting. The old gymnasium of Twin Cedars Middle School was packed, rows of metal chairs filled with teachers, parents, and bored students. Local journalists lined the back wall with cameras, waiting for the usual motions and dry discussions about funding and district policies. Marissa sat in the second row, her heart a slow thunder in her chest. Alan was across the room, near the exit, his coat zipped up, one hand on a messenger bag that held everything. The board members filed in, indifferent and rehearsed. Principal Stein gave a report on teacher attendance. Then came a presentation on cafeteria upgrades. The meeting ticked on. Then, item 14. Public grievances. A microphone was rolled to the front. Alan gave her a single nod. Marissa stood. Some in the crowd turned. Others looked away. A few whispered, amused or suspicious. She ignored them all. I would like to speak, she said clearly. One of the board members, Mr. Howell, shifted in his seat. This forum is not for staff disputes. Marissa took a breath. This is not a dispute. This is a report. She placed a folder on the lectern. Inside, printed versions of the emails, memos, and the flash drive transcript. Another board member reached forward to protest, but the press had already turned their cameras to record. And then Alan stood up. He walked to the side of the room and pulled down a projection screen. I've submitted the same report to the county office, he said. What you see here is only the beginning. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Footage rolled, anonymous interviews from former staff who had fled the district, memos proving internal gag orders, a timeline that connected unexplained resignations to fabricated complaints. One board member stood and left. 2 others demanded a break. The crowd murmured, then erupted with gasps. Marissa stood firm. Her voice trembled only once, when she played the voicemail from her old colleague, the one who disappeared before the trial.
He warned me, she said.
But I didn't believe him. I thought the truth would be enough. It never is, unless we speak it loud enough. In the aftermath, the board suspended the meeting. Reporters swarmed the exit. Someone asked Marissa if she wanted to sue. She didn't answer. That night, she walked alone down the dark pavement, rain soaking her coat, but her steps steady. Not vindicated, not victorious, but heard. For the first time, she had made them see. The fear wasn't gone, but it no longer controlled her.